The shocking truth has been revealed. David Stearns, of course, did not trade for a starting pitcher, which on the surface hurts, but reporters and insiders think otherwise, and fans agree, which is exactly what we're going to dive into in today's video. Did the Mets actually make a mistake by not going out and getting a starting pitcher, or did they do enough by getting 3 relievers and a center fielder? That's exactly what we're talking here on Mets Digest, and only on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to talk this starting pitching controversy, but first we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being the fact that 69.9% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, just a favor here in Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. And like I said, we're going to hear a lot from insiders today. We're going to start it off with the Atlantic's Andy McCullough, who ranks the Mets as a trade deadline winner. I personally think the Mets had a top 3 trade deadlines of all Major League Baseball teams, and many sources agree that they were in fact winners. McCullough says, while other teams pursued pitchers with multiple years of team control, David Stearns scooped up 2 of the best rental relievers, Ryan Helsley and Tyler Rogers, without doing much damage to his farm system. Again, the top 7 prospects in our system per MLB Pipeline were not traded. Go ahead and check out my trade deadline reaction video from a Mets standpoint if you haven't already. On deadline day, he swooped in for outfielder Cedric Mullins. Is there a chance the Mets will miss the surplus value of outfielder Drew Gilbert or pitcher Blade Tidwell? Gilbert, of course, the 12th prospect before trading per Pipeline, and Tidwell the 10th? Sure. But those gaps are easily plugged in the future with owner Steve Cohen's wallet. He is very, very open to spending. He will do whatever it takes to win a championship, growing up a Met fan himself, as this is the closest the Mets have come to looking like Cohen's dream, the East Coast version of the Dodgers, who of course are almost a big rival now because it's always them and the Mets going at it. At least that's what I think for the next couple of years moving forward, maybe even decade going forward, as the Mets are using a bustling minor league system to set up the big league club for October success. Now, it's not only the Athletic, it's multiple sources that are giving the Mets A's and are saying they are trade deadline winners, including The Score. Brandon Weil giving the Mets an A, saying David Stearns has built a roster that will be an incredibly tough outcome October. It'll be hard to eliminate this team. The Mets paid high prices for rental relievers Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, and Gregory Soto, but the bullpen is now one of the best in the majors. Cedric Mullins is also a great addition, bringing speed, power, and a solid glove to the outfield, an A overall. Not only does he bring all 3 of those things to the outfield, he brings a desperately needed center fielder, and of course 3 great relievers to really turn this bullpen from a bottom team in terms of ERA and in terms of the bullpen overall to a top team bullpen-wise, arguably the number 1 team in all of ball. Even ESPN said we're a winner, as we'll turn it over to David Scowenfield, and we know ESPN has bias against New York and the Mets. He says the Mets bullpen had been struggling for 2 months, at least aside from Edwin Diaz, who has been lights out of late. So, President of Baseball Operations David Stearns used the deadline to remake it, turning it into what, at least on paper, now looks like one of the best in the game. Tyler Rogers is unconventional with his underhand delivery, where he's basically touching the dirt, and men's league velocity at about 83, 84 miles an hour on his fastball, but he gets batters to pound that sinker into the ground and has been one of the top relievers this season with a 1.80 ERA. Ryan Helsley and Gregory Soto provide a power arsenal from the right and left sides, respectively, with Diaz, Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, and Brooks Raley already on the roster. This pen is now loaded. October baseball is a different game than the regular season. We'll get into this a lot. This was one of the reasons why David Stearns did not pursue a starting pitcher. More to come on that in just a little bit. There are more days off, which makes it even easier to go heavy on the bullpen. We've seen Atlanta Braves in 2021, Houston Astros in 2022, and the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2024, who, by the way, eliminated the Mets in the NLCS with 2 bullpen games out of the 6 games that they played, win the World Series on the backs of their bullpens. He continues here, saying the deals cost the Mets 2 of their top 10 prospects in infielder Jesus Baez. Number 5, this is a different source. Again, I go by MLB Pipeline, which had Baez at the 8, and outfielder Drew Gilbert, who they had at the 12, plus pitcher Blade Tidwell, who they had at the 10, who was number 10 on Baseball America's list, as well as MLB Pipeline. Dombrowski and Stearns have shown why they're regarded as two of baseball's top executives. They're not afraid to make bold moves, acting a day before the deadline to ensure they got the top relievers available. To cap it off, the Mets added center fielder Cedric Mullins, who gives them more offense than Tyrone Taylor, but less defense. But you take the offense for the defense, given the most recent struggles of the offense. Video coming on that as well in just a little bit. That will probably turn into a platoon situation or allow the Mets to spread out some DH at-bats to Juan Soto. Nothing wrong with improving the depth. Not only that, but the Mets jumped to 4th on ESPN's power ranking, 6th in World Series odds. But then again, Philadelphia is 3rd, and they were also considered winners, so take it with a grain of salt, because Philly really didn't do anything besides getting Johan Duran, who, by the way, that entrance is just completely overrated. Ryan Helsley and Edwin Diaz have far better entrances with Hells Bells and Narco respectively. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked here. As no question, it was a good trade deadline. Look at this. The subtractions, yeah, some of them are top prospects, but like we've heard plenty of times before, it was really guys that nobody wanted. Mets scouts went out, they scouted them internationally and domestically, found the right guys, drafted them low, or signed them as international free agents, sometimes even late in their years, like 18, 19 years old, when most international free agents signed at either 16 or 17. So they did that. Player development, developed them correctly into top prospects, and then they were flipped for some really, really good pieces in Soto, Rogers, Helsley, and Mullins. But where are the starting pitchers? The Mets were rumored to get so many of them. Mel Kelly, Mitch Keller, Edward Cabrera, Sandy Alcantara, Dylan Cease, Mackenzie Gore, Zach Gallen, Joe Ryan, all of these guys. So let's turn it back to the experts. Where exactly did they go? Why didn't they come to the Mets? Well, it's Will Salmon of The Athletic who's going to take it from here on out, saying the last time a New York Mets starting pitcher other than David Peterson completed 6 innings was on June 7th. Yet Thursday's trade deadline passed without the Mets adding to their starting rotation. The rotation, which features Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes, Frankie Montas, and Peterson, who, to his credit, has logged at least 6 innings in 4 straight starts, now 5, looks the same. The Mets probably took such a direction for a few reasons. 1, the lack of availability of quality starting pitchers in the market. 2, the prospect cost to get who was available. And 3, the growing ability these days to win the World Series behind a strong bullpen. Of course, as we've heard earlier, you don't have to play every single day and you get a ton more off days. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the first potential reason, being that several high-ranking executives entered the weeks and days leading up to the trade deadline wondering if an ace-caliber starter would even exist in the market. The best starting pitcher who ended up getting traded was Mel Kelly, who's solid, who went to the Texas Rangers. He's got a little over a 3 ERA. He's good, but he's not, I wouldn't say he's an ace. He went to the Texas Rangers from the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for 3 prospects. Left-hander Cole Drake, the Rangers' number 5 prospect according to the pipeline, lefty Mitch Bratt, number 9, and right-hander David Hagman, number 13. So 3 top 15 prospects, 2 top 10 prospects for a guy who I wouldn't even consider an ace, and many people wouldn't even consider an ace. That is a very, very, very high package. No other big name starting pitchers moved. Kelly will be a free agent at the end of the season. You traded all that for a rental. No Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins, no Zach Gallen from the Diamondbacks. Contenders such as the Mets, New York Yankees, and San Diego Padres loaded up on their bullpens instead. And honestly, I agree that this is the right move. He's going to go into an example here with Sandy Alcantara. Just as an example of the market, 2 high-ranking officials from rival teams said the cost for acquiring Alcantara, who's under contract through 26 with a club option in 27, was 2 top 5 prospects plus something else. Using the Mets as a guide, that meant 2 from the group of Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tonk, Carson Bench, and Jet Williams, plus another player. Would it have been worth it? No, absolutely not. Sticking with the Alcantara example, he is coming off surgery, and though his results have been better recently, he's had an uneven season with rival teams wondering about his workload moving forward after missing all of last season, and he also has over a 6.5 ERA. This isn't just about Alcantara. Other pitchers at the top of this market also had warts. I think Kelly is a great example as well. Mitch Keller, rather. He was going to cost a lot, even if it was just on his own. And if you paired him with O'Neal Cruz, Forget it. That price would be ridiculous. So I think Stearns went in the right direction here. As reason two, it would have been tough. If the Mets were going to acquire a starter, it was likely going to have to be someone they viewed as part of their playoff rotation. None of the guys, in my opinion, on the market would be good enough to top the following: in Peterson, Manaea, and Senga. The Mets probably have 3 playoff starters. Teams in the past have used a combination of starters and relievers to get through other games. AKA, you run a 3-man rotation, and if you need a bullpen game, you take a bullpen game. If Senga and Manaea are who the Mets expect them to be, which they probably will be coming back from their injuries, then the issue the Mets face in the rotation isn't about quality at the top. It's about logging enough innings and winning enough games to make the postseason without overloading the freshly revamped bullpen they just created. Basically, the 3 starting pitchers have to give them depth. Peterson has all season. Senga did before his injury, but hasn't been so good since coming back, and Manaea is simply working his way back. He should be giving depth once he is fully back 100%. And the last 2 reasons. We have AAA depth right now that could help us, and we can pull a Los Angeles Dodgers / multiple other teams. The Mets didn't do much of any shopping for depth starters, in part because they include Sproat and McLean as possible options if and when necessary. We've heard David Stearns talk about that. Check out my video from this morning about his press conference about the deadline. They're confident in both pitchers, but neither of them has ever pitched in the major leagues. It wouldn't be shocking to eventually see the Mets use either pitcher in a piggyback role, hopefully during September call-ups so you don't lose that extra year of free agency on them, which would allow someone like Clay Holmes to pitch less than 6 innings by design. The Mets don't seem committed to such a path quite yet. Thus, after surveying the landscape and considering all the factors, the Mets saw building an impressive bullpen as their best bet to their first World Series championship since 1986. It worked for the Los Angeles Dodgers last year. They rode their bullpen, going through the Mets in the process with 2 bullpen by committee games throughout the playoffs. It may work for the Mets too. They just need to get there first. Of course, we got to beat out the Philadelphia Phillies, who now have a half-game lead on us in the division. But with that, let's turn it over to our options. Let's start off with the starting pitching options. Clay Holmes, solid this year. Frankie Montas hasn't been so great in the about 30 innings that he's pitched. But I include this chart with bold names: Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Kodai Senga. You've seen them before. Those are going to likely be your 3 starters in the postseason if you run a 3-man rotation, which I think the Mets should do. And look at the ERAs. The highest is 283 at David Peterson, but he's given you 127 innings this season, which is great. He's given you a lot of innings. He eats up innings almost every single start. So if you get 3 starters who can go 6+ innings every single time in the postseason, then yeah, you can run a bullpen by committee day on your 4th day pretty easily because the bullpen won't be that worn off. Moreover, go to the furthest column all the way to the right, and you'll see some playoff experience. 7, 7, and 3 games with a solid amount of innings pitched from each of these starters, and it gets even better in terms of experience when you go to the bullpen. Look at Ryan Stanek, won a World Series championship in 2022. Now again, I highlighted the names that are almost a guarantee to make the postseason roster, and with the exception of Gregory Soto, who hasn't given up an earned run yet in a Met uniform, everybody is below a 3 ERA on the season. Very, very solid overall. Rico Garcia and Ryan Stanek are currently on the roster, but I don't necessarily see them making the postseason roster or being a part of it because I could see Holmes and Montas replacing them in the playoffs. Montas would go as your long reliever, and Clay Holmes, with how good this bullpen is, would probably not even be a setup man. He would go back to just a middle reliever, with Diaz being your closer, Helsley and Rogers being your setup men, and again, look at all that experience. There's plenty of experience there. There's a World Series championship. There's good veteranship. And, of course, very, very solid pitching in that bullpen right now. That, of course, beefs up even more if you send Holmes and Montas to the bullpen in the playoffs. So, overall, that is really, really solid. And to prove to you that you can win a World Series by having a good bullpen and not necessarily the best starting rotation, take a look here. This is from 2011 until last year, including every single World Series championship and their playoff ERA and how they ranked. There's 14 years total here. Anything bold under the ERA, which is the 16 Cubs, 17 Astros, 19 Nationals, 20 Dodgers, 23 Rangers, and 24 Dodgers, 6 out of 14, is an above 350 ERA. Anything 350 and below for a player, not even for a team. A team is really 375-4, but we'll say for a team, 350 and below is considered good. You are a good pitcher or a good pitching staff. That means over half of the time throughout the last 14 14 years, the playoff bullpen has been good or better from winning teams, from teams that won the World Series. Look at 2022. The Astros had a 0.83 ERA, 131 from the World Series champion Red Sox in 2013. Some twos sprinkled in there, plenty of them. Very, very good overall. Additionally, anything bold on the rankings mean they are in the bottom half of teams, and that's only 5 times. That includes the Cubs in 16, the Astros in 17, the Dodgers in 20, the Rangers in 23, and the Dodgers in 24. But keep in mind, if a team has a really, really good starter in the wild card game, remember the wild card game was just one game? If a team had a really, really good starting pitcher that day and the bullpen pitched 2 scoreless innings, that counts. They are the best team in the postseason because there is no minimum innings pitched, so these rankings could be even better. Of course, the Astros had the best bullpen ERA in the playoffs in 22, won it all. Red Sox and Giants, back-to-back years, second best, won it all. Red Sox in 18, second best bullpen, won it all. 2011, Cardinals, third best bullpen, won it all. This graph, this chart is to show you that you can very easily win a World Series behind a great bullpen, which is exactly what David Stearns did. That's what his approach was at the trade deadline. He didn't improve the pitching staff because he believes that the Mets will make the postseason, and they should. I'm 95+% certain that they're going to make the playoffs. It's in the playoffs that you need to lock in and you need to do well, and the Mets have 3 very, very good starting pitchers in Sean Manaea, David Peterson, and Kodai Senga that you can run as your rotation, and then you turn it to a great bullpen, and obviously that's worked before, so I could very well see it working for the Mets in 2025 as they try to beat the Dodgers, who beat them last year with their bullpen. Go down in the comment section, let me know if you agree with mine /some reporter /David Stearns' approach. Do you agree that this will help the Mets go win it all in 2025, or are you someone that wanted a better starting pitching rotation over a good bullpen? Again, I've showed you why I believe the bullpen is more important than the starting pitching rotation when it comes to being in the playoffs, and the Mets are in a spot where it's almost not a question that they will make the playoffs, it's the question of how far will they go, so that more needs to be your approach than trying to make the playoffs like a team that's middle of the road right now and questionable to make the playoffs. But again, let me know if you agree, let me know if you disagree down in the comment section down below. That is all the trade deadline coverage that we have, at least for now. Thank you for staying tuned with us on Mets Digest for all of it. Got another video coming out later today about the Met offense. A reporter gives a very surprising detail, and honestly, I agree with that detail, but we'll save that for another video. Thank you so much always for watching. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you today, and let's go Mets.